Here's an example of my power distribution board I made for my quad. So it's really simple. I just got one of these PC boards from Radio Shack, you can see. They come in a set of two. You can see these little perforated edges where they're actually attached like that when you buy it. It's cheap, it's like $2 or $3. But anyway, so these are made for, just making your own circuits and stuff. Really, you don't necessarily need these contacts. The only thing I'm really using these for is gives you a solder point to attach the wires to the actual board. Just that way you have something that you can mount to it rather than just having some wires thrown in there. You can mount the board onto something. But it's really pretty simple. You got bullet connectors. These are male. This on mine will connect to the battery. You could also use the correct part, which would be the I don't know exactly the name of these, XT60 connections. So if you have a male version of this, it would be better because then you can't reverse your polarity. But the way I did it, it's all color coded anyway, so as long as you match the colors to your battery and your cord, it's not a big deal. But anyway, these are the correct size to fit in here, so it just snaps right in. But anyway, so the power comes in through that. You see, used heat shrink on everything. There's another big piece of heat shrink here. So the power comes in, and then I just put solder and soldered that wire on first, and then one by one I soldered on the other ones. So if you look here, what I did is all of these are connected, and then all these are connected. There's nothing connected in the two, so that gives you your positive and negative. You can choose whichever side to use. But so I just soldered my first wires here and here, and then the next ones, and the next ones, and the next ones, and you end up with a big glob of solder. And this is actually pretty heavy. I'm sure there's better ways of doing this, just as a cheap way that I did it. And it gives you the option to add other stuff on later. If you want to add a wire, you can. Something else you could do is, rather than doing it like this, you could have, just a wire that comes out, and then you'd solder another split onto it. I prefer this way because I think you're going to get a more even distribution of your power. So the way I did it is I got my battery come in, and then my first power leads that come out, female connections for your output, males for your input. And that way, if you put males here, pretend like this is your output wire, and you had your battery hooked up and you touched them together, you would short your battery out, and bad things happen when you do that. But anyway, the way I did it is, this is heavier gauge wire. I don't remember the exact gauge. I bought this wire a long time ago. And then I ran out of that and got this thinner gauge, which I believe is 22 gauge, if I remember right. Or no, that doesn't seem right. It might be 16 or something. Anyway, so the way I did it is the power from my speed controllers. So you got the battery at the end, then the wires for the speed controllers are these here, which is thicker gauge, and they're closer to the battery. And then further from the battery, this one is actually going to go to my gimbal, which is that thinner gauge wire. And then this one I just put on, and that's going to go to my flight controller. And the black heat shrink is actually, I've got it quite a while back. I think I got it from Walmart, and a package that had a bunch of different sizes. This red is from a multicolor package that I got from Radio Shack, and the Walmart heat shrink is actually a better quality. It seals up a lot better than this one. If I can get it to focus. This one, the ends tend to burn on it once you're shrinking it, rather than this one. I mean, this one will burn too if you get it too hot, but it folds in really nicely and gets a nice tight fit. You hear the thunder, it's getting ready to rain. But anyway, so that's it. It's really simple to do. This did take me quite a while, just that was mainly because I was just taking my time, just I was watching a video and all that. You can see it got pretty hot. The more wire you get on here, the longer it takes to heat up, because the wire starts to act as a heat sink. So like these last connections that I did actually took me a really long time to get heated up, and I could only melt just this little bit of solder here, as where these I could turn this whole thing into one big pool of liquid solder. But now there's so much wire on it, it just distributes the heat so much that it's really hard to get all that heated up. So you just you want to heat up your solder that's on your wire, and then you want to at least heat up the immediate solder touching it. That way when it dries or cools, it's going to be one piece. And if you don't get this existing solder hot when you put your wire on, it's not going to be a very good connection and could end up breaking off. So you just want to make sure you do that, and be careful, because like once you get all this wire on here, you got to watch your soldering iron or your melt insulation. Like I did on this one, I accidentally hit that wire and melted right through the insulation, so I had to put some electrical tape on there. It's not really a big deal, it's just I'd prefer not to have that. This actually ended up weighing a decent amount. I hadn't put it on a scale or anything, but it's got a little bit of weight to it, but it's a lot of wire, and it's heavy gauge wire, because I want to have the option of upgrading my motors later on if I decided to, and I don't want to have to worry about having enough thick enough wire. If your wire's too thin, and the wire will heat up, and you can actually end up with some problems. Your motors might not be able to pull as much power as they need, and then your wires could even possibly get hot enough to burn. It's probably not very likely, but theoretically it can happen. But anyway, this is, let's see, I don't know where I put my harness that this goes in, but anyway, oh, here it is. So anyway, this goes right here, and it just coincidentally, these PC boards end up being the perfect size. I didn't measure it or anything, I just kind of eyeballed it when I went to the store, and I'm like, hey, that looks good. It snaps in like that. It sounds like we might be getting some hail out there. We've been getting a lot of hail lately. It's been pretty ridiculous. But anyway, that snaps in there, and my battery velcros to the bottom here, and then this screws up underneath here, and then the wires come up through those holes there. You go to the speed controllers, which are down here, and then the top piece goes on like that, and these arms fold out for the wings, or the props, and then the flight controller goes up here, and then you got your GPS over there. So the wires will come up through the bottom here, and for the speed controllers will be, actually speed controllers go down through the bottom, not through the top plate. So anyway, that's just an update on what I've been doing. See you later.